Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Book Review Blog. And today we're going to review the Stephen King book, Different Seasons. This is a story, this is a novel consisting of 4 novellas, or kind of real short novels. The reason why it's called Different Seasons is because these 4 novellas kind of have, like a seasonal theme, I guess is the way, where like the first story is called Hope Springs Eternal, so you get like the thing of spring, and the first story is, the full title of it is Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption. Now, everybody knows about the movie The Shawshank Redemption. This is the novella that movie is based from. This is a classic example of that Stephen King does not just write horror movies, or any movie that's based on a Stephen King movie is scary, that type of thing. I'm guessing that the general public, or basically like 90 to 90% of these you guys have seen The Shawshank Redemption, but for those of you who haven't, it's about a man named Andy Dufresne who is put in prison in Shawshank Prison, which is obviously what the prison is called, for murdering his wife and her lover, and he always has claimed that he's innocent, but he's put in prison anyway. And when he is in prison, he befriends a man named, I believe Ernie Redman is his name, but everybody calls him Red. And in the movie, he's played by Morgan Freeman, so obviously Red is African American, but in the novella he's not. But that's just kind of a small difference. But if you're familiar with the movie, the plot of the novella is very similar. Andy just kind of goes along and lives in the prison with Red. Red also committed a murder, but he claims that he's the only guilty man in Shawshank, to where he says he actually killed his wife, and I think a relative of hers, or something, like a sister-in-law or something. And while Andy is in prison, he befriends the warden. There's actually 3 wardens in the novella, and begins to work with him, and he gets, he basically changes Shawshank from what it was into like something more like for the prisoners. Like he creates a really big library. He does like the guards' tax returns, and gets really into good feelings and good with the guards. And he, for several prisoners, he helps them get their GED. And then one thing that what Red does is that he's like the man who knows how to get things. So, like, Andy comes up to him and says, can you get me a rock hammer? And at first he's like, no, I'm not going to get you that. That's a weapon. You're going to get yourself killed, or you're going to get yourself in trouble, and me in trouble anyway. He's like, oh, no. The rock hammer's about that big. And, you'll laugh when you see this rock hammer. And so, what happens is that with this rock hammer, you don't know it in the novella, but in this rock hammer, Andy starts to escape from Shawshank Prison. And it just so happened that I think it's better shown in the movie, because I don't know if his prison cell was geographically placed in the prison in the novella as it was in the movie. In the movie, it was placed kind of really at the far end of the prison, so where it's like, if you're tunneling out, you won't end up in the cell next to you, to automatically have a roommate. So, Anyway, but Andy does get out, and Red does get out, or Red gets paroled, and one of the reasons why the thing is called Hope Springs Eternal is because when Andy is in prison, he's like, you can't give up the idea of hope, that there's something out there for you. And, you know, understandably, when you're in prison, especially serving a life sentence, you don't have a lot of hope. You're going to die in prison, most likely. But you got, like Andy was saying, you've got to hold on to at least something, or else you become, like, institutionalized in saying that, like, you're stuck with prison life and prison routine, and it gets the most of you. So, anyway, I really liked that story. I loved the movie, so that's that one. The next one is called, the theme is A Summer of Corruption, and the story is called Apt Pupil. And that features a young boy named Todd Bowden, and he is 13 years old, and his parents, he's an only child, so his parents kind of dote on him and think, like, he is the best thing since, like, sliced bread. And his mom refers to him as an apt pupil, because he's very smart. And Todd has an interest in World War II, and where it's a little more than like, kind of your typical, like, junior high-ish interest in, like, something like that, where, like, you read up on it and that's fine. And what Todd has discovered is that in his neighborhood is a Nazi war criminal named Kurt Dusander, but in the real world, or in the world of in Todd's neighborhood, he is known as Arthur Denker. So Todd goes up to, you know, Kurt Dusander, let's just call him that, and he says, "I know who you are." And, you know, again, Dusander denies it, like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, I served in the war, but I was, you know, a fighter, and I moved to Germany, or I moved from Germany with my wife, and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, he creates this, like, cock and bull story, and Todd's like, oh, no, you're Kurt Dusander, and you're going to do something for me, or else I'm going to, you know, alert the authorities. You're going to just feed me information. You're going to tell me what it was like in the concentration camp, you know, torturing Jews. And so he and Kurt Dusander form a relationship to where Kurt basically tells him stories about what it was like in the concentration camp. And that, as you can imagine, affects Todd and kind of affects Kurt as well, where he, you know, right now he's just living a life of just kind of a retired life, I guess. I mean, he doesn't talk to much people. He does go out, but, you know, he tries to stay as under the radar as he can. But now that he is reliving his journey through, like, the Nazi war camps and things like that, his desire to harm people is coming back to him. And where it's like starting out with, like, killing, like, stray animals, and then it pops up to killing, like, homeless people, because I guess where this takes place somewhere in California, and I guess where it takes place, there's a lot of homeless people. And so, and this also happens to Todd as well, where both Todd and Kurt Dusander start taking their aggression on homeless people, to where Todd is killing these people too. And it happens that, like, you know, Todd's grades slip, and, you know, he just kind of goes downhill, and eventually, I don't want to say they break off, but they see each other way less. But they're always there, like, together, to where, like, what has happened before affects them. And like Todd does much better in school, going through high school. Like this takes place for about 5 years, where like I think in the starting of the book it's like summer before his 8th grade year or something, and then when the novel ends, it's like summer before Todd goes off to college, and so that's where it kind of ends. I'm not going to tell you the ending, because it may be a little less familiar than Shawshank Redemption. So anyway, the next story is called the theme is Fall from Innocence, but the story is called The Body. And this is where you get the movie Stand By Me, again, which is also a very famous movie, and hopefully, like, a lot of people have seen it, where I can just kind of go over the basic plot, because, again, like the Shawshank Redemption, this novella is very similar to the movie. So, the the novella, focuses on 4 boys. Their names are Gordy LaChance, he is the narrator, Chris Chambers, Vern Tessio, and Teddy Duchamp. And, Gordy, Chris, and Teddy are just kind of hanging around, and Vern sees them and asks them if they want to go look for a dead body. And what it is that a boy named Ray Brower, who is their age, has been missing for several days. And Vern heard from his older brother that his older brother had found this kid, and that this Ray Brower has died. And so Vern gets the idea that he and his friends can go see him. And so basically that's what they do. The 4 boys go out, and the whole novel is them going out to find this dead body. And it takes like this kid is like 20 miles from where they are. So again, it's a pretty long journey, and they have like, it's basically kind of like I don't know if it's exactly a coming of age story, but it's like one of those like, you can like learn what's in the mind of like a 12-year-old boy. Like they talk about girls, they talk about like TV shows at the time, they talk about things like that, other things, and eventually they do find the boy. And then there's a little scuffle because there's older kids, that includes Vern's brother comes back. Chris has an older brother who's there, and there's another boy named Ace Merrill who is kind of like the leader of this little gang that involves Vern's brother and Chris's brother and other kids. And they're like, oh no, we're gonna take the body and get recognition and our names in the paper. And, Chris and Gordy and Teddy and Vern are like, oh no, we're going to take this body. And that's where it kind of ends. Nobody takes the body. They end up like calling the police like anonymously and tell them where this body is. But again, it's like a basic kind of friend story and kind of coming of age story. So again, if you've seen the movie, the book ends the same way. So anyway, the last story is has the theme of A Winter's Tale, but the story is called The Breathing Method, and it's kind of funny because it's a man named David, and he's telling a story about him going to he calls it a gentleman's club, but it's not like that. It's a place where men go to tell stories. It's, if you're familiar with like the Nickelodeon show Are You Afraid of the Dark, it's very much like that, where people gather around and somebody tells a story. Like this one is like the socialite Are You Afraid of the Dark, because they meet in like a really expensive place and they get served like drinks and things like that. So one day David is there and he hears a story told by a doctor of when the doctor was younger, and this doctor was like an obstetrician, and he this doctor gets a client whose name is Sandra, and she is obviously pregnant, and she's excited about the pregnancy, but again, he tells a story that's based in like 1930s, and Sandra is unmarried, so she's like, I understand that this is a really big deal, as it was at the time, and but I really want to have this baby, and I really I'm happy that I'm pregnant, and I'm gonna take good care of it. So anyway, so the pregnancy goes along, far along, but by basically like Sandra's like 8th or 9th month, both she and this doctor start to get really bad visions, and really bad nightmares that something is going to happen, to Sandra or her baby. And so it's the night that Sandra delivers, and it happens to be Christmas Eve, and it's really bad weather. It's like sleeting outside, and so Sandra, she gets labor pains, and she gets in a cab to go to the hospital. And on the way to the hospital, she has a car accident. The cab is fine, but Sandra ends up getting decapitated, and one of the things that this doctor has taught Sandra is about the breathing method, or basically it's Lamaze. And so when the doctor finally gets to the hospital and sees the car accident and sees Sandra's body, and her head is obviously not part of her body, but miraculously her body is still doing the Lamaze, or the breathing method. And basically it's like this, she is still determined to have this baby without a head. And it actually happens where the baby is born and is adopted. And that's kind of where the story ends. You don't, like, he tells what happens to the baby, but it's not important. So anyway, that's what the book is. I really liked it. Some stories more than others. But anyway, the next Stephen King book that I'm going to read is Christine. So that's what's up next. I bid you all farewell and happy reading.